Eduardo Mapelli Mazzi is charming, incredibly wealthy, and he walks straight into one of the most scrutinized families on the planet. While the world was busy watching the royals fall apart at the seams, this well-dressed property developer quietly slipped into the side door, won the heart of Princess, and built himself a life most people could only dream of. But who is Eduardo Mapelli Mazzi really? Because behind the monogrammed shirts and the luxury penthouse lies a story packed with broken engagements, a secret child, a wedding the queen didn't even know was happening, and family drama that would make your jaw hit the floor. Stay with me, because this one goes deep into the man the tabloids couldn't keep up with. Let's start with the basics, because even the basics are extra when it comes to this man. Eduardo Mapelli Mazzi. Go on, say it slowly. Eduardo Mapelli Mazzi. It sounds less like a modern businessman, and more like someone who should be commissioning paintings during the Renaissance, right? That's because, in a very real sense, he comes from that kind of world. The man Princess Beatrice chose to spend her life with isn't just another wealthy London developer who climbed his way up. Technically, he's a count. Yes, an actual count. His family holds the hereditary title of Count of the Kingdom of Italy, granted back in 1913 by Victor Emmanuel III to all male descendants of the Mapelli Mazzi line. Now, Italy may have abolished royal titles in 1946 when the monarchy fell, but that hasn't exactly stopped families like his from holding on to that identity. And honestly, when your lineage stretches back centuries, it's not something you just casually drop. In fact, Eduardo's ancestry reportedly traces all the way back to a son of King Federico II of Sicily. Let that sink in. We're not talking about a family tree. We're talking about a historical archive, generations of nobility, land, influence, the kind of heritage that predates most modern nations. And the family hasn't exactly downsized over time. They still own the Villa Mapelli Mazzi in northern Italy, a 15th century estate that started life as a monastery and now operates as a luxury retreat. So yes, while some people marry into royalty, Eduardo walked in with his own version of it tucked neatly into his background. But here's where it gets interesting, because Edo isn't some dusty aristocrat living off inherited wealth and old portraits. He's very much a man of the present, educated at the prestigious Dragon School in Oxford, then Radley College, and later earning a master's degree in politics from the University of Edinburgh. He had all the right doors open to him, and he walked through them. By his early 20s, he had already founded Bonda Property, a high-end development and interior design company catering to London's elite. He's polished, connected, ambitious, and let's be honest, very easy on the eyes. But beneath that carefully curated image, there's a far more complicated story, one involving love, loss, a child who changed everything, and a royal wedding that almost slipped under the radar. So before all that unfolded, where did this count with a career really come from? And what parts of the story don't quite fit the fairy tale? Let's look at the empire he built. Bonda Property. Before he was a husband of a princess, Eduardo Mapelli Mazzi was building an empire brick by luxury brick. At 23, fresh out of university and armed with family connections and an eye for design, he launched Bonda Property in 2007. The concept was simple on paper. Find undervalued pockets of London, develop them into stunning high-end homes, and sell them to people with more money than most of us will ever see. In practice, the man turned it into a machine. By the time he was linking arms with Princess Beatrice on red carpets, Bonda had overseen property developments worth more than £875 million. Let that number sit for a second. That's not a business. That's a dynasty. Bonda became known for its sleek interiors, its obsessive attention to detail, and its almost theatrical approach to what luxury living should look like. Eduardo, who later revealed he is dyslexic, something he and Beatrice actually have in common, channeled everything into the visual and spatial world of design. His Instagram is basically a portfolio of drool-worthy homes, each one looking more like a 5-star hotel than a place where actual humans are supposed to live. He also made no secret of his political opinions along the way. Ahead of the 2016 London mayoral election, he wrote an opinion piece for Property Week urging the future mayor to push for more central London redevelopment. He called out politicians by name, criticizing Andrea Leadsom and Jeremy Corbyn on social media. even using the hashtag I'm with her on Twitter on the night of the 2016 U.S. election. This was a man who had opinions and wasn't afraid to say so. That's quite the contrast to the carefully managed silence most people married into royal circles are expected to perform. But here's where it gets complicated. For every glittering success, there's been a shadow of controversy. Property experts and writers at Forbes were quick to push back on Banda's claim that they were developing homes in undervalued parts of London when the company's latest project was located in Notting Hill, one of the most expensive and sought-after postcodes in all of Britain. Critics were quick to note that there was nothing undervalued in Notting Hill. The descriptor started to feel more like marketing than reality. And then there's the situation in Australia, which is the kind of story that makes you wince. Bonda was linked to a planned development called the Masset Ocean Club, a high-end beachfront project on the Gold Coast of Australia that was promoted as a major international venture, the kind of announcement that gets press releases and glossy renders and breathless coverage. But the dream didn't survive contact with reality. The Masset project collapsed, the company behind it went into administration, and just like that, one of Banda's most ambitious international moves became a cautionary tale. Reports emerged about this setback just as Eduardo had jetted off to Palm Beach, Florida for a design conference, which depending on your perspective was either impeccably timed or spectacularly poorly timed. Still, Bonda keeps moving, keeps building, and Eduardo keeps showing up to conferences in pastel blazers, talking about architecture with the confidence of a man who has never let a collapsed development knock his stride. But the business is only half the story, because long before Bonda was making headlines, Eduardo Mazzi had a very different life planned, one that involved a very different woman, and that story nobody saw coming. Let's talk about the ex-fiancé and the son named Wolfie. Here's where things get properly soap opera dramatic. Before Princess Beatrice, there was Dara Huang. And Dara Huang is not a woman you forget. She is an American architect, Harvard-educated, internationally successful, absolutely stunning. And for several years, she and Eduardo were the picture of a perfect modern couple. They got engaged around 2014. They were building a life together. And in 2016, they had a son. His name is Christopher Wolf Mazzi, though literally everyone calls him Wolfie. And if you've seen the photos, you know that Wolfie is perhaps the most adorable child to have ever been adjacent to a royal family. But by 2018, the engagement was off. The details of what went wrong have never been fully aired in public. Neither Dara nor Eduardo has chosen to make the specifics of their split into tabloid fodder, which honestly makes them more dignified than half the royal family. What we do know is that they separated, that they share custody of Wolfie, and that Dara, clearly not one to sit quietly in anyone's shadow, moved on and built her own impressive career in design. She even started a company called HWK Design Group, which is thriving. But here's the layer that makes this whole thing dramatically interesting. Dara and Eduardo's breakup didn't happen in a vacuum. Within months of their split, Eduardo had begun dating someone new, someone considerably more high profile, someone whose last name is Windsor. The timing raised eyebrows. Always does in these situations. Was the relationship already developing before the engagement formally ended? Nobody said anything publicly. Nobody ever does. But the timeline was tight enough to make people speculate, and in the royal gossip world, speculation is practically its own currency. What made the situation more complicated was Wolfie himself, because Wolfie didn't disappear when the relationship ended. He was right there, a living, breathing reminder of Eduardo's previous life. And when Beatrice and Eduardo got serious, Wolfie became part of that picture, too. Princess Beatrice, a princess of the British royal family, became a stepmother to a little boy named Wolfie, and she has by all accounts embraced that role completely. Reports suggest the co-parenting arrangement between Dara and Eduardo is genuinely amicable. Dara took Wolfie to Florida for Christmas in 2025, posting Instagram stories of him at mini-golf under a caption referencing a Florida Christmas, while Eduardo was photographed at a design event in Palm Beach that same trip, which if nothing else proves that whatever happened between those two, they've managed to keep things civilized for the sake of their son. That's rare. That's actually impressive. But the Wolfie situation would go on to shape the entire narrative of Beatrice and Eduardo's relationship, from the wedding to the family photos to the very structure of their household. And speaking of that household, how did any of this even start? How does a count with a complicated past end up falling for a princess? The answer involves a friendship that goes back decades and one very fancy party. Let's rewind all the way back to his early life, the count in the making, because Edoardo Mapelli Mazzi didn't just stumble into royal life. He was practically born into it. He arrived on November 19th, 1983, at the Portland Hospital in London, a place long favored by the British elite, including royals. His father, Alessandro Mapelli Mazzi, had a backstory that sounds almost fictional. Born in Argentina, raised in Italy, educated in England, and somehow ended up representing Great Britain in alpine skiing at the 1972 Winter Olympics. After hanging up his skis, Alex reinvented himself as an international art dealer and even became a fellow of the Royal Society of Arts. Edo's mother, Nikki Williams Ellis, carved out her own path in politics, charity, and design, later remarrying and expanding the family. That meant Edoardo grew up with a blend of aristocracy, politics, and creativity, and a half-brother from his mother's second marriage. Tragedy struck when his stepfather, Christopher Shale, died in 2011, but Edoardo turned grief into action, co-founding a charity that built Rwanda's first grass cricket stadium, and even cycling overnight through London to raise funds. Now that you know where he came from, let's talk about how he found his way to Princess Beatrice, because the story of how a count wins a princess is anything but ordinary. Here's the thing about Edoardo and Beatrice. This was not a chance encounter. This was not a royal Cinderella moment where two strangers locked eyes across a ballroom and everything changed. This was something far more interesting, a love story that had been marinating for decades without either of them fully realizing it. The Mapelli Mazzi family in the Yorks, Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson, have been close friends for years. That's not a rumor. That's something both families have confirmed publicly. When Edoardo and Beatrice's engagement was announced in 2019, Nikki Williams Ellis released a statement saying quite pointedly that her family had known Beatrice for most of her life. These weren't strangers. These were family friends. The kind of connection that means you've probably been at the same Christmas parties, the same charity galas, the same summer events for the better part of 2 decades without it ever becoming romantic. And then somewhere around September 2018, something shifted. The press didn't catch wind of it until November 2018, but by then the relationship was already underway. Edoardo had just ended his engagement to Dara Huang. Beatrice had ended her long relationship with Dave Clark in 2016. Both of them were unattached. Both of them were circling the same social stratosphere. It was, as these things sometimes are, inevitable. Their first confirmed public appearance as a couple came in March 2019 when Beatrice attended a fundraising event at the National Portrait Gallery in London with Edoardo by her side. This was the moment the tabloids lost their collective minds. Who was this tall, rakish property developer? Why was he standing next to a princess? And most scandalously, was that a date? 2 months later, in May 2019, they attended the wedding of Lady Gabriella Windsor together, confirming to everyone watching that this was serious. Then came September 2019 in Italy, and it was a proposal. He had the ring designed himself, working with British jeweler Sean Lean on a custom piece that reportedly featured a baguette-cut diamond set in a floral design. On September 26, 2019, Buckingham Palace made it official. Princess Beatrice of York was engaged to Edoardo Mapelli Mazzi. The statement from the happy couple was almost suspiciously normal. "We are both so excited to be embarking on this life adventure together," they said, "and can't wait to be married." For a royal engagement announcement, it was refreshingly undramatic, which was both lovely and a little ironic given how dramatic the actual wedding was going to turn out to be, because what should have been the most beautiful day of their lives turned into something almost unrecognizable. And the reason, well, you probably already know the name. Let's talk about the wedding that the world almost missed. Let's talk about the wedding, or rather, the wedding that was supposed to happen, and then the wedding that actually did. The original plan was beautiful. The Chapel Royal at St. James's Palace on May 29, 2020, a proper royal ceremony, a reception in the gardens of Buckingham Palace. The kind of event that would have been photographed 1,000 times over and turned into magazine covers and commemorative plates, and all the usual pageantry that comes with marrying into the British monarchy. And then everything fell apart. First, there was Prince Andrew. In November 2019, just 2 months after Beatrice's engagement was announced, her father sat down with the BBC for an interview that can only be described as catastrophic. Andrew's attempt to address his friendship with convicted sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein went so badly that he was forced to retire from royal duties almost immediately. The fallout was enormous and immediate, and it landed squarely on the shoulders of his daughters. Beatrice's wedding planning was scaled back. A low-key ceremony suddenly felt less like a preference and more like a necessity. And then came COVID-19. The pandemic shut the world down in spring 2020. The chapel royal ceremony was postponed. The Buckingham Palace Garden reception was scrapped. The whole elaborate vision crumbled. When Beatrice and Eduardo finally married on July 17, 2020, it was at the Royal Chapel of All Saints at Royal Lodge in Windsor, a small private ceremony with only immediate family present. There were no crowds, no public announcements in advance. Nobody outside the immediate circle even knew it was happening until it was over. In some ways, what happened at that wedding was more extraordinary than anything a big planned ceremony could have offered, because Beatrice wore a dress that belonged to her grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II herself, a vintage ivory silk taffeta gown originally designed by Norman Hartnell in 1962 that the Queen had worn to the premiere of Lawrence of Arabia. Beatrice also wore the Queen's diamond fringe tiara, the same one Her Majesty wore on her own wedding day in 1947. In a ceremony that had been stripped of almost every royal trapping, Beatrice somehow ended up wearing the two most historically loaded pieces of clothing and jewelry in the whole family. There's something both heartbreaking and beautiful about that. A wedding that was supposed to be grand and public, reduced to something intimate and secret, but made luminous by two pieces borrowed from the most beloved woman in the family. Although Prince Andrew walked Beatrice down the aisle, he was absent from the official wedding portraits. That detail speaks volumes. His presence was acknowledged privately. Publicly, he was erased. The message to the media was clear. This day belonged to Beatrice and Eduardo, not to the scandal that surrounded her father. The marriage was done. The chapter was closed. But what kind of royal life were they actually building? And what complications were already waiting for them on the other side? Let's look at royal life, the blended family, and the babies. After the quiet wedding, life for Beatrice and Eduardo moved fast. And I mean fast. They set up home initially in a 4-bedroom apartment in St. James's Palace, which sounds lavish until you realize it's actually considered relatively modest by royal family standards. They are not working royals in the traditional sense, which means no official public duties, no endless royal tour schedule, no automatic state funding for their lifestyle. Beatrice holds a real job. She's vice president of strategic partnerships at the software company Affinity. Eduardo runs Bonda. They are, more than almost anyone else in the immediate royal orbit, people who actually work for a living. In late 2022, they moved again, this time out of the palace entirely and into a 6-bedroom converted farmhouse in the Cotswolds, complete with tennis courts, endless gardens, and an outdoor swimming pool. The property is reportedly worth around £3.5 million, and it became their sanctuary away from London. During the week, they live in the capital close to the children's schools, and weekends are spent in the countryside. It is in every conventional sense an enviable life, and the family grew. In September 2021, just over a year after the quiet wedding, Beatrice gave birth to their first daughter together, Sienna Elizabeth Mapelli Mazzi, born at the Chelsea and Westminster Hospital in London. Sienna was christened at the Chapel Royal at St. James's Palace in April 2022. At birth, she was 11th in line to the British throne. After the death of Queen Elizabeth II in September 2022, she moved up to 10th. The children of this marriage are not just heirs to a property fortune. They are, in the eyes of the British Constitution, in the line of succession to the crown. Then came an announcement in October 2024 that sent royal fans into a frenzy. Beatrice and Eduardo were expecting again their second child together, due in early 2025. Wolfie and Sienna, the blended family's original duo, will be getting another sibling. Sarah Ferguson, ever the proud grandmother and never one to miss a moment, posted on Instagram with characteristic exuberance. Wolfie, August, Ernie, and Sienna will be over the moon to have the 5th member of the 5 side. But the pregnancy came with a scare. On January 22nd, 2025, Beatrice gave birth to their second daughter several weeks prematurely. The baby, named Athena Elizabeth Rose Mapelli Mazzi, arrived early at the Chelsea and Westminster Hospital. Beatrice was so shaken by the experience that she later took on a new patronage with Born, a charity dedicated to ending premature birth globally. She said it was incredibly close and personal to her following the early arrival of Athena. Eduardo, ever the supportive partner, posted 3 clapping emojis under her statement. His love language apparently is punctuated applause. Athena was christened at the Chapel Royal at St. James's Palace in December 2025 in a ceremony that brought the family full circle. The same chapel where it all began, with 3 kids, 2 homes, and a booming business empire. You'd think the drama might quiet down, but then the Epstein files blew everything open again, and this time Beatrice's name was in the documents. Let's discuss the shadow that won't go away. Epstein, Andrew, and the files. No story about Princess Beatrice's family is ever really complete without the shadow of Prince Andrew, and in 2025, that shadow got darker. The release of documents by the U.S. Department of Justice, part of the ongoing fallout from the Jeffrey Epstein case, sent shockwaves through the royal family once again. Among the newly surfaced emails was a reference to a 2011 phone call involving Sarah Ferguson and journalist Geordie Gort, with Beatrice described as being present during the conversation. She wasn't accused of anything. Being mentioned in an email is not an indication of wrongdoing, but in the current climate, her name appearing anywhere near the word Epstein was enough to reignite press attention and public scrutiny. Eduardo, for his part, responded to all of it with the same strategy he seems to deploy for most controversies. He kept going. Reports noted that he continued his business and social engagements without disruption. He was spotted at a private lunch club event at Cornice, a Michelin-star restaurant in Belgravia, while press interest in the Epstein story was still swirling. Photos were shared on Instagram by Lando Design and Build showing a long table at what appeared to be an industry networking lunch, the kind of thing Eduardo attends regularly without drama or fanfare. Then there's the Andrew question hanging over everything. Prince Andrew has been stripped of his royal duties, has had to leave Royal Lodge, and is, let's put it plainly, a deeply controversial figure. Beatrice and Eduardo's ability to navigate life as a couple while her father remains at the center of one of the biggest royal scandals in modern history is genuinely remarkable. They appear neither to be distancing themselves entirely from Andrew, because he did walk Beatrice down the aisle, after all, nor be publicly defending him. They occupy a careful, uncomfortable middle ground, and they occupy it without complaint. Meanwhile, Prince William and Kate reportedly had a hand in pushing Andrew out of Royal Lodge, a move that has clear implications for where Beatrice and Eugenie fit in the family's evolving structure. The sisters are expected to keep their royal titles, reportedly as part of an informal arrangement between Andrew and King Charles, but the political terrain within the family is shifting constantly. Through all of it, Eduardo has remained steady, present, quietly getting on with things, and that maybe more than anything else is the most interesting thing about him. So, where does the story go from here? Let's examine the latest chapter. What's happening right now? As of early 2026, Eduardo Mapelli Mazzi is 42 years old, the CEO of a major luxury property company, the husband of Princess, the father of 3 children across 2 families, and a man who has somehow made himself the least controversial member of the most controversial royal household in Britain. He's been doing the international circuit for Bonda, most recently speaking at Palm Beach Design Days in Florida, an event that brings together the biggest names in architecture and interior design. He showed up in a blush pink and powder blue suit, charmed the crowd, and posted about a restaurant called Le Bilboquet. On brand, always on brand. Back in London, Beatrice made her first public appearance since Athena's premature birth at the V&A's Wonderland fundraising gala in early 2025, the same event at which she announced her new patronage with Born. Eduardo was by her side. The couple, photographed together for the first time since the baby arrived, looked very much like 2 people who had been through something hard and came out the other side holding hands. Their family life continues to involve all 3 children, Wolfie, Sienna, and baby Athena, across 2 homes, 2 parents, 1 stepmother who is clearly beloved, and 1 ex who's been admirably civil about the whole situation. It is by any standard a modern, complicated, loving family that doesn't fit neatly into any royal box. The Cotswolds house became their summer base in 2025, with the family transitioning back to London for the school year, a rhythm Eduardo confirmed in an interview with The Times. Nikki, Eduardo's mother, lives in Oxfordshire, keeping the family geographically close. It's the kind of detail that tells you a lot about a person. When his home base puts him within easy reach of his mom, you know what matters to him. As for what's next for Bonda, well, new projects presumably. The collapse of the Masthead development in Australia was a setback, but if Eduardo's track record tells us anything, it's that this is not a man who stays down after a knock. He will dust off the blazer, show up to another panel talk, make another Instagram post, steadily grinding and keep building. And Beatrice, who's ninth in line to the British throne, stepmother, mother of two, royal by birth and professional by choice, will continue doing what she has always done, navigating an extraordinary life with quiet grace, while the man by her side keeps the count going. And that in the end is the truth about Princess Beatrice's husband, a count who doesn't need the title, a developer who builds more than just property, a man who walked into a princess's life carrying a complicated past, and somehow made it all look like it was always supposed to go exactly this way. So there you have it. The man, the count, the empire, the drama, all of it. Eduardo Mapelli Mazzi is not the simple love interest the tabloids first tried to make him. He's a man with royal blood in his veins, a son from a broken engagement, a business worth hundreds of millions, and a place in one of the most scrutinized families on earth. And somehow through all the chaos, the canceled weddings, the Epstein shadows, the premature births, the collapsed Australian deals, he has kept showing up, steady, charming, present. Maybe that's what a princess actually needs. Not more drama, just someone who shows up. If you made it this far, you clearly love a good royal deep dive. And trust me, we are just getting started. Maybe we're going to pull back the curtain on another royal story that the palace very much did not want us to tell. You are not going to want to miss it. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and we'll see you right back here for the next one.